Modern history often paints a specific picture of India before the 20th century, a developing region, struggling with poverty, waiting to be pulled into the modern age by Western industry. This chart shows global GDP in the early 18th century, and it tells a different story. Before British arrival, India alone controlled roughly 25% of the entire world's economy. That wealth was driven by a manufacturing hub that dominated global trade. Artisans produced luxury goods like Dhaka muslin, a fabric so fine it was known as woven air. Indian agriculture and textiles were so dominant, European manufacturers struggled to match their quality or price. This was the prosperity that first drew the attention of a group of traders from half a world away. The East India Company arrived in India as a profit-driven enterprise, showing up on Indian shores with smiles and trade proposals. The turning point came in 1757 at the Battle of Plassey. On paper, the East India Company's tiny mercenary force was outmassed by the Nawab's massive army. But the British commander, Robert Clive, used a massive bribe to bypass the battlefield. Clive promised the Nawab's top general, Mir Jafar, the throne in exchange for his betrayal. While the loyalists fought, the general's thousands of soldiers remained motionless on the battlefield. With the battle won, a private corporation now held the entire wealth of India's richest province. Bengal hadn't been conquered by a rival nation, it had been acquired by a business. By 1765, the corporation secured Diwani rights. This legal agreement granted the East India Company total control over tax collection across millions of farmers in Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. A private trading company was now functioning as a government, but it felt no obligation to protect the people paying the taxes. This flowchart demonstrates how the new system operated. The company immediately doubled the agricultural tax rate, demanding more than half of a farmer's yield. The revenue bypassed local infrastructure, flowing straight from rural fields into London bank accounts. Then, in 1769, a severe drought hit Bengal. Instead of distributing their massive reserves of grain to feed the starving population, the East India Company sold it at high prices. Simultaneously, they forced farmers to replace food crops with cash crops like indigo and opium for export. As the population died in massive numbers, the company faced a drop in revenue. Their solution was to increase the tax burden on the surviving farmers by another 10% to make up for the loss. Roughly 10 million people perished. In a single year, 1/3 of the entire population of Bengal was wiped out. The famine was the direct outcome of a system that prioritized the extraction of revenue over the survival of the people who produced it. Having drained the agricultural sector, the corporation turned its attention to manufacturing. British textile mills were struggling. European consumers vastly preferred the soft, durable silk and cotton coming from India. To solve this, the British government enacted selective trade laws. They imposed tariffs of up to 80%. Decades of starvation, extreme taxation, and the destruction of local industry reached a breaking point. In 1857, a massive rebellion erupted across the subcontinent as soldiers, farmers, and weavers united to push the corporation out. The British retaliation was swift. Under orders to show no mercy, the military unleashed the devil's wind. Entire villages were burned, and captured rebels were tied to the mouths of cannons and executed as a message to the surviving population. The scale of the uprising forced London to act. The British Crown dissolved the East India Company and took direct control. Soon after, they began a massive construction project, the Indian Railway System. While often described as a gift of modernization, the railways were engineered as extraction arteries. They were designed specifically to pull grain, cotton, and raw materials from the deep interior straight to the coastal ports for shipment to Britain. The transition of power to the crown replaced a corporate monopoly with a state system that used infrastructure to better organize the looting. When the British Empire finally departed in 1947, they left behind a fractured landscape. After 2 centuries of extraction, a nation that once held a quarter of the world's wealth was deeply impoverished and carrying immense generational trauma. Yet the empire was eventually forced out by millions of ordinary citizens. A unified civilian movement reclaimed their country through sheer endurance. The corporation and the crown managed to drain the wealth from the soil and the gold from the treasuries. But the foundational resilience and the inherent capacity of the civilization survived. India's current trajectory is the story of an ancient economic superpower finally resuming its interrupted flight.